You went in for one thing. A $5 lamp, maybe, or a pack of tea lights. 45 minutes later you are standing at a till you didn't know existed, holding a bookshelf, a plant pot, 3 picture frames, a bag of frozen meatballs, and the lamp somewhere at the bottom of a giant yellow bag. You are not entirely sure how any of it got there. Here is the uncomfortable part. That was not you being weak. That was the plan working exactly as designed. Because an IKEA is not a shop. A shop lets you walk in, grab what you need, and leave. An IKEA is a single, winding, one-way path that pulls you past nearly every product the company makes, in a building the size of 4 football pitches, with no clocks, no windows, and no obvious way out. You didn't get lost. You were routed. And that maze is only the first of 2. Because the same mind that designed the path through the store also designed the path the money takes when it leaves, and that one is far more clever, and far better hidden. This is the story of the most quietly engineered company on Earth. Follow the money. Start with the floor you're standing on. Most shops are laid out like a grid. Aisles, signs, a straight line to the milk. You are in control, you get in and out fast. IKEA does the opposite, on purpose. It builds a single meandering route. Inside the company it's been called the long natural way, that loops you through a showroom upstairs, spits you into a marketplace of small temptations, and only then releases you into the warehouse where the thing you actually came for is waiting. To reach it, you have to pass everything else first. This has a name in retail. It's called the Gruen effect, after an architect named Victor Gruen, who essentially invented the modern shopping mall. The idea is simple and a little sinister. If you make a space disorienting enough, no windows, no clocks, a layout you can't predict, shoppers lose track of why they came in. The errand fades. And a person who has forgotten their errand is a person who browses. Who lingers? Who buys on impulse? IKEA took that principle and turned it into architecture. The winding path isn't a design flaw you tolerate, it's the single most valuable feature in the building. Every extra minute you spend inside, every extra product you're forced to walk past, is a deliberate nudge toward the thing they actually sell, not furniture, but time. Your time, spent surrounded by their catalog. And they make that time comfortable. The showroom isn't shelves of boxes, it's dozens of complete little rooms, fully furnished, warm, aspirational, a whole life you could have if you just added one more thing to the bag. You're not shopping. You're touring a version of yourself that owns nicer things. By the time you reach the checkout, the $5 lamp has quietly become a $100 afternoon. So that's the first trick, they control where your body goes and how long it stays. Now watch them do something far cleverer. Watch them get you to work for free. There's a moment in every IKEA trip where you get hungry. And that is not an accident either. IKEA runs one of the largest restaurant operations of any retailer on the planet, around $2.5 billion in food a year, roughly 1 billion meatballs, sold deliberately cheap. Often at a loss. The internal nickname for the meatball says everything, they call it the best sofa seller. Because a hungry, tired shopper leaves. A fed shopper stays, sits down, talks it over with their partner, and decides to buy the sofa without ever going home to think about it. The restaurant isn't a perk. It's a refueling station that keeps you inside the maze long enough to finish the job. Then comes the masterstroke, the one that built the entire company. The flat pack. The story goes back to 1956, when an IKEA designer named Gillis Lundgren was trying to fit a table into his car for a photo shoot, and it wouldn't go. So he unscrewed the legs and laid them flat beside the top. And in that small, irritated moment, he saw the whole future of the business. If the furniture comes apart, you can ship it flat. You stop paying to transport air. You fit far more into every truck and every warehouse. And this is the crucial bit, you hand the last, most expensive step of manufacturing to the customer. You carry it out. You drive it home. You spend Saturday afternoon on the living room floor with an Allen key and a diagram, assembling the product yourself, for free. Think about how strange that is. IKEA has convinced hundreds of millions of people to do the factory's final job, assembly, and to feel good about it. To pay for the privilege of their own labor. And here is why it works, and it is genuinely one of the most elegant findings in all of behavioral economics. In 2011, 3 researchers, Michael Norton, Daniel Moken, and Dan Orley, ran a set of experiments and named the effect after the company itself. The IKEA effect. They found that when people build something themselves, they value it far more than an identical object they didn't build. In their studies, subjects would pay around 63% more for furniture they had assembled with their own hands. Sit with that number. The wobbly bookshelf you put together is worth more to you, or not despite the 2 hours of swearing, but because of them. The labor is the point. Your effort becomes attachment, and attachment becomes loyalty. IKEA didn't just outsource assembly to save money on wages. It discovered that making you do the work makes you love the product, and love the brand. So step back and look at what they've built. A store that decides where your body goes. A restaurant that decides how long you stay. A product that makes you carry it, build it, and treasure it. At every step, the customer is quietly turned into an unpaid employee, one who pays for the shift. Now, hold that idea, make them do the work, and hide who really benefits, because it turns out that isn't just how IKEA designs a bookshelf. It's how IKEA designed itself. Here's a question almost nobody can answer. Who owns IKEA? You'd assume a family, or shareholders, or the stock market. The real answer is stranger than any of those. IKEA is owned by a charity. The company's stores are held by a Dutch entity called the Stichting INGKA Foundation, set up by the founder, Ingvar Kamprad, back in 1982. On paper, it is a non-profit foundation, a charity. And not a small one. Its assets have been estimated at around $60 billion, which at one point made it, quietly, the wealthiest charitable foundation on the entire planet, bigger than names you'd actually recognize. There's just one catch. For years, this record-breaking charity gave away almost nothing, on the order of €1 million a year, a rounding error against 60 billion in assets. It was, by the numbers, one of the least generous large foundations in the world. So if the money wasn't flowing out to good causes, where was it going? Follow it, and you find the second maze. Because owning the stores is not the same as owning IKEA. The truly valuable thing, the IKEA name, the concept, the blueprint of that winding store itself, is owned by a separate company, IKEA, sitting in a different structure entirely, historically steered through a foundation in Liechtenstein controlled by the Kamprad family. And every single IKEA store on Earth, including the ones owned by the charity, must pay this other company a franchise fee for the right to be an IKEA, 3% of revenue. 3% of every meatball, every bookshelf, every hex key, siphoned off the top of the whole global business and routed toward the structure the family controls. So look at what's actually happening. The charity owns the shops and pays tax like a charity, which is to say, very little. The brand sits somewhere else, collecting 3% of everything, in jurisdictions built for discretion. The founder's family stays firmly in control, the whole empire is made immune to any takeover, and the tax bill and the public disclosure are both kept as low as the price of the meatballs. In 2017, the European Commission opened a formal investigation into whether the Dutch end of this arrangement amounted to an illegal sweetheart tax deal. Kamprad, for his part, called tax efficiency a natural part of the company's low-cost culture. That is the flat pack applied to a fortune. The same instinct that ships a wardrobe as a flat box and hides the real work in an instruction booklet also ships the ownership as a flat, plain-looking charity, and hides the real joinery in Liechtenstein. Here's the pattern, and it reaches well past furniture. IKEA is the same design idea, executed twice. In the store, They make you do the work, walk the maze, carry the box, build the shelf, and they keep the real mechanism, the psychology routing your every step, completely invisible to you. In the corporate structure, they do the identical thing, make the money do the walking, through foundation after foundation, and keep the real ownership, the part that actually captures the value, completely invisible too. Front of house, a simple yellow and blue shop that sells cheap furniture and meatballs. Back of house, one of the most sophisticated ownership machines ever assembled. And the genius, in both cases, is that it doesn't feel engineered. You don't leave IKEA feeling manipulated, you leave feeling like you got a bargain and had a nice afternoon. The structure doesn't feel like tax avoidance, it feels like a charity that happens to sell sofas. The whole thing is designed, like the flat pack, to look effortless on the outside while the real complexity stays folded away in the box. So here's the lesson, for any company that seems suspiciously simple, the cheap furniture, the friendly brand, the good deal. Ask the boring question underneath. Not what are they selling me, but what are they quietly getting me to do, and where does the value actually end up? Because the businesses that last aren't the ones with the flashiest product. They're the ones that got you to do the work, and built the real structure somewhere you were never meant to look. You went in for a $5 lamp. You walked the whole maze, you built the shelf yourself, and you loved it. That was the plan. And somewhere, 3% of it was already on its way out the door, flat-packed, and gone. A cheap product hiding an expensive machine, we've seen that exact trick before, in a food court, with a hot dog that refuses to change price. If you want the other great loss leader story, the one about a warehouse that's secretly a subscription business, that video is one click away. Follow the money,